What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today hopefully will be the day that the LS6 in the cts-v drift car starts. So what I need to get done today is installing the oil cooler and getting the driver's side header on. Might require some massaging around the steering shaft, filling this thing up with oil and turning that key. So let me show you guys the oil cooler I got. The oil cooler is a G Plus kit off of eBay. It comes with an adapter piece like so to bolt right up to the side of an LS engine. And then it also comes with, I already opened it and gone through it, this little guy to keep your AN lines split, mounting screws, Allen screws, plugs for the NPT terminals on here. If you want to do like oil pressure or whatnot, hook up a manual oil pressure gauge. I won't be using that, so I'll be Teflon taping these and plugging them. And a gasket. Now, I will warn you, this gasket is not the greatest. I have the exact same kit on the Black V, and this gasket seeped from the day I put it on. I replaced it with a Felpro gasket, and it works a lot better. Then it comes with the cooler. I think I got like the 25 row or something like that, whatever this one is. So, nice black cooler. Again, exact same cooler that I have on the Black V. And then this isn't included, but I bought heat sleeving to cover the lines in where they go behind the exhaust. And then they come with nice braided AN lines and fittings that they look good. I mean, on the Black V, I've had no problems with them. They look great. The red is starting to fade where it's behind the grill from the sun, which I feel like is kind of to be expected. You probably don't put much of a UV rating on AN fittings, like the anodizing. But either way, we got the two long sections of hose. That is plenty to route it out through here and out to the oil cooler. My oil cooler is going to be sitting right about here, so it'll be in the same spot that it is on the black car. I have my rad support over here. So on my rad support, I had just got these guys taped there just because that's kind of where it's going to be. So to solve my gasket issue, in this Felpro engine gasket set that I bought for my engine, it had a couple different variations of this gasket. Now, this is the style that you would typically run if you don't have an oil cooler, because it just bypasses the oil through the little cover. Same with this guy. And it looks like we got some kind of soft gasket, and then we got this one that has a more like the rubber surround. It's also kind of like dished. I think I'm going to try and use this one. There was one that was identical to the one that comes in there, just with the nice blue seal, but it is currently on the black car because that's when I realized that the black car needed that. So I think I'm going to go with this guy. I'm assuming once you start screwing it down, it'll flatten out. And then it has the seal on here, and hopefully it works. If not, I'll have to pull it off and pull the header off, then pull the oil cooler off, and then just put the proper replacement in there. So just like that, we have the adapter in. We replaced this little bypass guy right here. Two 10 mil bolts, throw in the Allens, throw in your gasket. I loosely put the AN lines on first. That's what I found makes it easier, because like once this plate is on, the adapter is on, it's kind of hard to like finagle these and get them at the right angle. So I just start threading them and then put the plate on. It makes it a lot easier. So once I have the front lines hooked up, I will come back and tighten these with a wrench, get them all snug, and then we'll slide our heat sleeve down it, and we should be good to go. Measured out and secured around the line. We'll just slide that all the way back to the base. I only really need, you can see the other piece comes to about the alternator. I don't really need much heat protection out front here. It's more so just down in the area of where the exhaust is. Obviously, that's the heat generator within the engine bay. So once we're back, we're good. All right, we got the lines hooked up to the cooler. The cooler is ultimately going to sit right about here once the rad support's in. So we're just going to lay it on the ground right now because I don't plan on putting the rad support in for this first start. And I also put the little line split right here just so that in the event that it does move, which it shouldn't be moving, and the engine shouldn't be moving that much. It just won't rub on the subframe or anything. Just be that piece right there. So now I'm gonna go underneath and I'm gonna tighten the lower lines now that we're all hooked up here. So it's time. We're pouring some oil in here. I just got some cheap 1540 diesel oil that I actually currently have in the truck. And I don't like it. It's conventional, but it's a little chattier on the top end, more chattery on the top end of the 8.1 than synthetic is. I'm probably just gonna switch the truck to Redline. I don't know why I haven't, probably because of the cost and the amount of times I gotta put oil in it. But after this oil change, truck's going on Redline. So I figured I had these extra couple bottles, so I will fill the car up with this, run it for a while on it, and let it wash off all the assembly lube inside the engine and break everything in. I mean, the bottom end is all stock, but top end is all new. So we'll just run it on this, and then before it heads to a dyno, we'll get the old trusty Redline in there. Probably run a 2050 because it'll be hot, and with how many miles this engine has, there are some larger bearing clearances than factory, I can assure you that. We're all full here. Last step, driver's side header. So this has to get dented somewhere, and I'm thinking it is this pipe right here. So I'm gonna look up some pictures online to see where other guys have dented these exact same headers, give it a couple preliminary hits, and then put it in the car and test it for size. Once the header's in, we can move forward with trying to start this thing. Pretty wild. No oil leaking on the ground or anything, so that's a good sign. It means the drain plug is sealed. Hopefully no oil leaks once she started. I put about 7 quarts in it because it is a 6-quart system, but I also, wasn't reading full yet, but I have a dry filter, a dry engine, and a dry oil cooler. So that'll definitely take up some capacity to an extent. We're getting close. And with us getting close means I'm getting nervous. So let's check back in once I have some bang marks on those headers, and we'll be ready to put it in and get this thing started. Okay guys, I've got the battery hooked up. So battery's hooked up over here. I got the engine filled with oil. I got the header on the driver's side, and I just realized I didn't put the coil packs on. So let me do that, and then let's go ahead and try and crank this thing. See if we get fuel. Well, that's not good. That right there is an issue. Let's see what happens. I'm nervous. Are you nervous?
Yeah, because you're nervous.
Do I not have enough voltage? So it's cranking, but it won't start. We have fuel because there is rail pressure. There's definitely rail pressure. Do we have spark? I don't know, but there's some fuel in the engine bay, residual, so I don't really want to start testing to see if I have spark. But everything's hooked up like it should be. So I guess what I'm gonna do is I'll go through and check some fuses and just do a once over of fuses and make sure everything's good. Everything important is good. All right, so this time I hooked the jump pack up. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, so our fuel system's primed. Showing 12.6. See? All right, guys, so it is
it's probably about a week later at this point. I started editing the video, and it was just a lot of failed attempts to try and get this thing to start. And I decided that you guys don't want to see a video that is just a failed attempt at me trying to get this thing started. So I've been messing with this thing a ton over the last week, and I really wanted to see it run last weekend, but we had no luck. So I was struggling with a lot of different things. It was like popping out the intake manifold and doing all kinds of weird things, and it was 100% not starting. With the fuel injector leak, I put the stock injectors back in. So we got the stock LS6 injectors back in. It turns out I had to, after talking with ICT Billet, I had to buy the LS3 injector seals in order to get these LS2 injectors to seal. So the ones that came with the kit, they're just a hair too small. So I have new injector seals coming today, but that's kind of on the back burner right now because I just want to get this thing started. Even if it's on the stock injectors, I can always throw the LS2 ones in at a later date. So it took me a while, but on the 05s, if you go all the way back here, there's a fuse block back there. And I was seeing some people were having issues with 05s when it comes to flashing the ECU. And they would have to pull the audio fuse out of that fuse box back there because when you have the factory nav, somehow the ECU talks to it and it does some weird stuff. So when I was keying on the car, I was getting no reading from the coolant readout, no reading from this coolant gauge, and no reading from the fuel pump gauge. And it was kind of weird to me. So, and I was also trying to use my little scan tool to pull any codes, and it wasn't connecting with the ECU. So I ended up pulling the audio fuse, and then boom, it all started working. So I was finally able, after trying so many things, I pulled the front cover off with my dad last weekend, crank pulley off, front cover off, double check timing, check the valve train, was swapping ignition components and all that stuff. It was such a pain, but I confirmed everything mechanical looked okay. And basically once I did the audio fuse, I finally was able to pull a code, and it was for a crank sensor. Now, here is where I'm hitting myself in the head. I put an aftermarket, like Dorman or whatever, crank sensor in here because I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do the right thing while this engine's out, do a new cam sensor, do a new crank sensor, all that stuff, and we'll be good to go. Well, it turns out that these cars, LS's, don't like aftermarket crank sensors. I should have left the functioning crank sensor in the car, so I got this GM AC Delco crank sensor in today. So I'm going to try and slap this in and really keep my fingers crossed that this thing will at least try to fire, because it's throwing a crank sensor code, so I think it's getting confused as to when to fire and whatnot. I don't really know, but I'm going to start. I'm going to disconnect the battery, drop the starter, and I'll show you guys. I'm going to swap this crank sensor and just check the pigtail harness that goes to it, make sure the wires aren't burnt up or anything. So here we are under the car. I'd removed the starter from right here, and this is the replacement crank sensor that I have put in. Now, when I unplug the harness, this is my fault. I did look over the harness, but I did miss this. You can see right here, these three wires where they bend at this joint, I guess from moving and rubbing on this foil, they did in fact split. So I'm curious as to if, one, that sensor isn't an issue, and these wires are just touching each other and causing a freaky reading. Well, either way, I'm gonna cut this insulation back. I'm gonna put some new heat sleeve on this anyways and swap the sensor because I have it and we're here. So let's get after it, and I'll check back in once I get this opened up. All right, I forgot the update, but starter's back in. I threw some heat sheath around the power wire. I plan on probably redoing that power wire, but I will be coming under here because the brake lines get a little close, and I'm gonna build brake lines for the whole car, but that's besides the point. New crank sensors in, wires are repaired. Let's get this header back in and see what happens. Okay guys, got the header back on, got the dipstick back in. I got the whole ignition system hooked back up here. I just gotta hook the starter wire up to this little distribution block that I have temporarily jumped over. And I think then we're gonna try and give this a shot. Back to being nervous thing. Oh, I also got an air filter, just a big giant floppy air filter, so sweet. Just topped off the oil because I've been cranking it a ton and it was pulling oil into the filter and whatnot, so we were a little low. Oh, and into the cooler. Okay, so got the fire extinguisher nearby. Let's give this another shot so you guys can actually hear. Woo! Let's go! That was it. That's what I've been waiting for. Oh man, it sounds so good. So good. Whoo, man, I killed it real quick because obviously I don't have an exhaust on. I don't have a cooling system or anything like that, but whew, okay, it runs. The freaking drift car runs. Nothing's leaking. I'm ecstatic. That just turned right over. It popped a couple times in the first one. Second one, touched the throttle a little bit. She fired. Holy crap, I am happy. Oh man. So it's Friday. I think on Monday my new power steering pump will be here. That way we'll be able to get a fan on this thing and get the belt on and get the cooling system in. I mean, I can do the cooling system on tonight, but that was it. That was it. Let's go. I'm gonna do one more here. Let's see. I'll take it. I'll take it. All right, so I started a couple times from inside the car, but now I'm gonna throw you guys on the tripod, start it from with the camera outside the car to get a look at everything. Obviously, it's just gonna be a crank pulley spinning and a lot of noise, but a lot of good noise. That is insane. I'm so hype. I'm just hype. It's all good. I think what I'm gonna do next is I did a lot of cleaning up down here with just routing things. I gotta get the brake lines back in, at least from the master cylinder down to the ABS pump. I am gonna be keeping ABS on this car, and then when we go to the track, I'm gonna unplug a wheel speed sensor to disable everything, but I do want to keep ABS on the car for the sake of keeping cruise control. As goofy as that sounds, I want to be able to street drive this car to the track. So if I want to drive the car to OSW, I can get on the highway, set cruise control, and drive to the track. This car came with some form of catback. It looks like an exhaust shop made it, and they added an X pipe, and then it comes back to MagnaFlow mufflers. I think they're MagnaFlow mufflers. There's no stamping on them, but they're like exact replicas of what the MagnaFlows look like for this car. So I'm gonna paint the whole exhaust up with some high temp paint, clean it up. I don't like the look of the rust and like that stuff right there, all the corrosion. So we'll get it all painted up, and I'm actually gonna put it on the car because I believe the headers will line up with those flanges right there. Those are the factory flanges that bolted to the stock cats. And from there, I'm gonna see how loud it is. I don't plan on keeping this exhaust. I wanna go to a single exhaust with V-bands and just have it come out like the driver's side or whatnot, but that's for down the line. I also have suspension work I need to get done. I gotta do all the poly bushings down the driver's side, and then we're gonna jump back into the project that I keep mentioning and I haven't really touched on at all, the dual caliper setup. So we got a ton of stuff to do still, but having the drive line in the car, having the car running is one, a major boost in morale, but two, a major step in the right direction when it comes to getting this thing done and closer to the track. So we got a ton of stuff to do. Obviously it's not gonna find, it's kind of fine and idle there a little bit. It was really struggling though. I'm gonna put the LS2 injectors back in, and then we gotta figure out how we're gonna get this thing tuned. And basically, if I wanna get this thing tuned, I need to have everything 100% buttoned up. So we got a long list of things to do before I can get this thing to a tuner. I gotta find a tuner in Florida with a dyno, but either way, if you guys made it this far, Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you don't, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the little bell thing next to it. And we're gonna keep grinding on the cts-v drift car. I'm super stoked, and I hope you guys are too. And I'll see you in the next one.